And the dog coughs just in time to lead us into another episode of Central Line. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Katie Berlin, and we have a special roundtable discussion today. I am so excited. We have so now we have, including me, 4 voices for you to try to distinguish if you're listening. So we'll have our guests, who are 3 incredible technicians. We'll have them introduce themselves at the beginning, and then maybe periodically I might just ask you to pipe up who you are before you say something so people can learn who's saying what. But I'm so stoked for this conversation. This is going to be great. So Natalie Boursiquot, Liz Hughston, and Heather Prendergast, thank you so much for making this work. This year, AHA said it was the year of the team. Honestly, every year should be year of the team. But it is nice to have that sort of theme in mind whenever we're thinking about content, whenever we're thinking about whose voices to feature, because it really is something that we haven't seen enough of in the profession. And one of the things that I love most now is seeing technician voices being elevated and shared, and such a variety of perspectives from technicians. So this is going to be one of the highlights of the year on the podcast for me. So I'm going to ask the 3 of you to just share a little bit about yourselves, what you're doing now, and what you'd like people to know. Natalie, would you like to go first?
Sure. And thank you again for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with 3 amazing technicians. So I'm happy to be here. I am Natalie. I have been in the veterinary field for about 16 years now. Initially, the plan, like I think a lot of people, was I had that childhood dream of being a veterinarian. So that was my initial plan. And I actually completed my undergraduate degree and 2.5 years of vet school before I shifted gears and ended up kind of switching my career path and became a registered veterinary technician, which is where I am now. Kind of went the leadership route through being a registered vet tech on the floor, to being a shift lead, a practice manager, and now an area manager within a specialty. So I kind of made that shift as well from general practice to specialty. I tend to like to dibble and dabble in all kinds of things. So the current thing is cardiology, but I've been, in oncology and dentistry, ophtho. I like all the things, and especially the weird things that a lot of people don't tend to like eyeballs.
Like eyeballs, yeah.
So, yes.
It's always the eyeballs.
I am the one that likes the eyeballs. I don't know. So yeah, currently in cardiology and kind of hoping to kind of stick here. My passion is obviously elevating veterinary technicians and making sure that we're truly utilizing them in practice, and really getting the true benefit of having a technician in practice, to the practice, to the staff, to the doctors, just to have a well-rounded veterinary team. So that's kind of my biggest passion and why I'm here now.
Love it, and perfect for our conversation today. We're going to be talking about, I didn't even say that. It doesn't matter. Like, we could have the 3 of you just talk about whatever, but we are going to be talking about team retention today, specifically technicians. How do we keep technicians from leaving? Mm-hmm. How can we get them to not ever want to leave? And that is a question that everybody, I think, wants to know. And Natalie, what you just said in your bio, like, I hadn't really thought about that as being something really specific to technicians versus veterinarians, that you can hop specialties if you want to. You can work for an ophthalmologist for a while and then go work for a cardiologist. And it's really cool because you never have to get bored with one specialty, and you can always go back to general practice or ER. I love that so much. And I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, Liz, you're up.
Hi, I'm Liz Hughston. I am an RVT. I actually hold every available U.S. credential for technicians. So I'm a CVT, LVT, LVMT, RVT, and I'm a veterinary technician specialist in small animal internal medicine and emergency and critical care. I have been registered for 17 years now, which seems crazy. I think what Natalie said is so spot on. I'm just passionate about veterinary medicine. I love working in the field. I love veterinary technicians, veterinary assistants. I love everything that we do in this profession. And I am I am very positive about the direction that our profession is taking, especially in terms of elevating the roles of veterinary technicians. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
Love it. And that passion shows for sure. We need people who are passionate both in and out of the clinic. It takes everybody. So, Heather.
Thank you. I'm Heather Prendergast, a registered veterinary technician, and I hate to age myself, but I've been in this field for over 30 years. I can't believe that either. But, I've served every role in our practice, from a kennel assistant because I was so young when I started, all the way up to hospital administrator. And I would like to say that I had retired out of my last hospital that I was in for about 20 years and really started doing more consulting and helping more practices on a broader level. Because being in hospital, I was only able to impact my team. But leadership is definitely what drove me and drove the success of our hospital. And that's where I really started when I started consulting, that leadership is the key. And having a great leader team, having a great culture, that is priority. And as I'm consulting with hospitals, while we can work on financials, the culture is the key. And if we can make the culture work and have a great place to work, which leads to employee retention, then ultimately the practice is going to succeed. So that piece has really driven my passion for this industry and not willing to give up. We can get there. It just takes all of us to be able to make that happen. So that's my passion.
And a worthy passion, and one I deeply believe into, that good leaders are absolutely, it's something that we have to invest in if we want this profession to grow and evolve, and to keep people in it. Because I definitely have had experiences where I know that if the leadership in place had been different, I might even still be there, and I'm not. I'm doing this, which is great, and I love it. But there were a lot of factors for why I left the clinic. But I think that it was definitely a big part of that in a lot of the situations I found myself in. And it's so applicable to so many different areas of vet med, like, people who work in corporate versus independent practices, and people who work in academia, and people who work outside of the clinic. Leadership is important everywhere, and it's something that none of us really have a lot of background in by the time we get into the field. So yeah, big, hearty agree on that there. Here's a question. Heather, do you feel like when you were a kennel assistant, if someone had said, leadership is going to be really important to you and you're going to end up having all these leader positions, do you think you would have believed them? Is it something you always wanted?
It was not something I would have believed in when I was that young. I just didn't understand enough about that role and responsibilities. That has completely shifted, where yes, even kennel assistants need some leadership because they are going to be leading clients in some way, and they're going to be leading maybe another team member. And so the more that we can share the growth, while it may not be as high level as it is for a practice administrator or manager, I still think that they need it. And that also helps them lead themselves better, both personally and professionally. So it's a nice way to grow individual team members, even if they're just kennel assistants.
Yeah, for sure. Leading from within the team is something that I feel like we're starting to hear a little bit more about. As an associate vet, I often felt sort of like in a similar boat to a lot of technicians, I think, where I just kind of felt like I was supposed to show up and do the things that I was supposed to do. And I wasn't really supposed to have an opinion about how we did them, because it wasn't always welcome. Is that something that I could see a lot of nodding? Natalie, is that something that in your experience you've had too?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because a lot of times I don't think we give veterinarians enough credit for the leadership role that they play for RVTs and, for the whole team, for assistants, for kennel assistants. I think it's important to recognize that, because even myself, as I was learning as an RVT, even though the veterinarian doesn't have the same skills as I have, most of my mentors have been veterinarians. And so that role within the hospital is really important, I think, for us to foster it. I think as a leader, so having been in that practice manager role and currently in a manager role, I think that's important from the leadership side to kind of build that relationship between the veterinarian and the RVT, or the, any staff member really. I tend to lean towards the technicians because that's what I have most experience with. But I think fostering that relationship is what really helps kind of develop our, the environment that we need to be able to everyone do their job the best that they can. So.
Yeah, I love that. Liz, do you have thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah, I have thoughts on that. Yeah, I think that leading from within is one of the most difficult things that we can do as team members. And I think so much of it is based on has become kind of the buzzword around veterinary medicine right now, but it really is about the culture of the practice. And, I'll put in a plug for AHA Publishing and just talk about Josh Vaisman's new book that just came out, which is fantastic. And I think if you have an environment of positive psychology and psychological safety, then it becomes much easier to lead from within. And I would urge leaders to take a really hard look at whether your environment is fostering that kind of psychological safety so that people feel comfortable to speak up when they see something that is wrong or that they want to change, or they see a way that they want to develop. Dr. Berlin, Katie, I've listened to you talk enough on Central Line to know, you hate surgery. So if you had been in a
hate is a strong word.
Hey, I hate anesthesia, so I'm right there with you. But if you had been in a psychologically safe environment, you could have spoken up maybe and said to your management, hey, I don't like surgery. It's not my strong suit. Can I allow me to focus on the outpatient side, on, or even if you were worked in an environment that had a hospital, on the hospital side, allow me to care for the hospitalized patients, or let me do all of the client education around these diseases or whatever it might be. But when you're in an environment where it's not safe to talk about your hopes, your dreams, the direction you want to go, I think it becomes really difficult, no matter what role you're in, whether you're an associate veterinarian, whether you're a credentialed technician, whether you're an assistant, whether you work at the front desk. We all have ideas about how we can make things better at the practice, not just for ourselves, but sometimes for everybody. And to be shut down, to be ignored, to feel like your voice isn't heard, I think is a major issue. And I do think that dovetails really perfectly with our discussion today, because I think that's what forces people out. That's one thing. So you say to your boss, hey, I feel like I'm not growing. I want to learn more. I want to get my VTS. I want to move into leadership. How can I do that? And a boss says something like, well, no, you're a technician. That's what you do. And you're doing what you do. And there's nowhere for you to go. Why would a person stay in an environment like that if they're told, no, there's no more money for you, there's no more responsibility, there's no growth opportunity? But all of that comes from a lack of leadership, because a leader, I think a true leader is someone who is open to hearing that kind of feedback and to finding ways to maximize the team that they have. And not only that's just going to help the team members, it's going to help the practice, it's going to help the bottom line, it's going to help everything overall. So I think that's where the leadership is really key, especially in terms of retention.
That is such a good observation. And as you were saying that, I was just thinking, of all the people who are listening and are probably like, but in my practice, that wouldn't work because, my favorite that I have heard many times is well, you can do that if you want to, but I can't pay you more. And it's oh, well, let me just do it out of the goodness of my heart then, that I want to bring this special set of skills to the practice and then use them for free, especially that they cost me money to get. And I, thinking about that, I'm thinking about the leaders I've had that are really good and the leaders that have not been so great in a lot of respects. And the big difference is that when you ask them something, the good leaders don't say we can't and then list all the reasons that we can't. They don't automatically say yes because everything isn't possible, but they'll say, well, what would that look like if we could do that? And then start that train of thought. And they might give you homework to do, like legwork. Okay, you go figure this out and then we'll see if we can make it happen. But like, they don't just say no. And that is just a huge culture shift on its own. Heather, you've been in every role in the hospital. And so I'm very curious about your perspective here. You know, we're talking about how to keep, oh no.
Uh-oh.
Oh no. As soon as I asked Heather a direct question, she disappeared. Oh, it's a sign. Okay. So I'm going to ask, because we're still recording, so hopefully she'll come back. So I'm going to ask you both then, like Natalie, having grown through this profession a little bit, like the more you learn, do you find yourself thinking of all the reasons why something can't be done? Like, do you find yourself identifying more with that sort of practice owner role where their job is to like keep hold of the finances and make sure we don't get too out of line on, you know, and don't set a precedent? Or do you feel like the more you learn, the more you realize it's possible?
I think definitely in my like baby stages as a leader, I fell into that mindset for sure. Always thinking about, well, that's not going to work because of this, or, you know, well, what's our labor cost going to look like if I add that extra technician that this doctor is saying that they absolutely need? You know, that's always how it starts out. But I think as you grow in the profession, kind of just similar to what Liz was saying, that the environment is what becomes important in building that culture. I'm going to use the buzzword too, because it's really important to me. I think it's a huge part of how we keep our technicians and how we keep any staff member. Really is culture more than anything. But I think as I started to learn that, then I started to look at all sides of things. Okay, what would it look like if I add an additional technician? Do we have the space to see an additional patient and, you know, get a return on that investment? You know, we can still look at it from a business standpoint, but being open to that, I think, has definitely been something that I had to like flex my leadership skills on and learn how to incorporate into my role. But yeah, for sure, it started off as no, like that's not going to work. These are the reasons why that's not going to work. Which I think that perspective also is helpful to have, you know, to know in the back of your mind what your challenges might be, right? That's still, you can't ignore that there are going to be labor costs, that there are going to be, you know, obstacles that you'll come across, but not leading with that. I think leading with the yes, and then kind of sprinkling in the challenges and how do we work around that, I think is how you get there.
I think that is super challenging because I get why the knee-jerk reaction is a no, or because it takes a lot of effort on the part of leadership to think about how things might be different. And we all, you know, change is scary. And historically in veterinary medicine, we've been a little bit risk averse, a little bit change fearful, yeah, just a little. So I think that part is also difficult. And I think the more that leadership focuses on like self-awareness, not just as on individual self-awareness, but kind of institutional, you know, profession-wide self-awareness, I think leaders are now recognizing that oftentimes they're put in a position without training, without mentorship, without their own growth in mind. It's because they've been there the longest, or, you know, they want more money and they're told the only way they can get more money is if they go into a management role, even if they don't want a management role. So I think the industry is starting to wake up to the idea that this isn't the best way to create leaders in the practice. And so now I think there's a much bigger focus on how do we make sure we have the best leaders that we can. And I think it's because we're in this moment of crisis where we don't have enough people in the profession to do the work to care for the pets that we need to care for. And we have to find a way. We can't graduate our way out of this crisis. We have to find a way to keep people. We have to find a way to bring people back to the profession. I can't tell you how many veterinary technician groups I'm in where people say, I left to go to nursing school and I regret it every day. I left vet med because of XYZ, and I miss it so much. I wish I could come back. I wish that I could make a living and work only one job. I wish that I was respected as a professional. I wish that my title meant something. All of these pieces, I think the industry is starting to finally recognize that these are the keys to how we move forward. We have to find a way to not only hold on to people, but to bring people back in. And while we're also encouraging people to come in, right? There's that stat about veterinarians, what they surveyed veterinarians, and 60% of them said they wouldn't recommend this as a career if someone came to, or if their kid came to them, or if someone came to them and said, would you be a veterinarian, or I want to be a veterinarian, they would actually dissuade them from entering the profession. I think that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
But I do see why.
Yeah. I mean, there's, so many reasons why. I'm just thinking about, so like I did an externship because this vet med is my second career. I was in art history before this. And I did an externship in my senior year of high school with a horse vet, Dr. Francie Luther. She was great. She was the vet for all of our horses, like, when I was taking riding lessons growing up, and I would always look forward to her being out there. And I did like ride-alongs with her. And she pretty much was like, do not do this. And she also had the perspective of a solo equine practitioner who had just gotten associate after 25 years of being on call. So like she probably wasn't the one to listen to, but she really did try to talk me out of it, and it worked. Like I was a liberal arts major, and then came back to it. And I think that's just sort of a small, tiny little nutshell version of like what we see overall in the profession. It's not that people are like running away from vet med because they hate it. It's a work that really is a calling for a lot of people, and they just can't imagine doing anything else, but are forced to, either to care for themselves or to care for their families, or to be able to like go home at night sometimes instead of going to be a hostess at whatever restaurant because they can't make ends meet.
And to escape the toxicity, which is so prevalent in our profession. And I think it's hard with the group of folks we have on this call, like that, these are the anathema. These are the antithesis of toxic leaders. But they are out there. Yeah. And that makes it even more difficult. This mean girl ethos, the clickiness, the, eat our young kind of idea.
I suffered, so you have to also.
Mm-hmm.
It's prevalent.
Yeah.
I think you made a good point also of that a lot of times the leaders are not who's best for the position, but who's been there the longest, who knows someone, or, it's not always the best choice. And that makes a huge difference. I think one of the things that I've always taken pride in is making sure that whoever follows me knows who I am as a person, so that they can make a decision on their own if I'm the right leader for them. And they can tell me if they think I'm doing something that they disagree with or whatever the case may be, but I'm not going to come in and be like, oh, because I've been in the field for X amount of years, that I'm your leader. Like that doesn't make sense to me. So,
I've been here longer.
Right.
That's my spot.
Natalie, I'm guessing you can probably look at your statistics and point to, your retention, your turnover rates. And I think that is how we're going to move the needle. We can talk until we're blue in the face about psychological safety and the importance of culture and all of that. But there are going to be some entities in our profession who are only going to look at the bottom line. And I think there's an argument to be made. I know that we need data on this. I know we need probably someone out there to do a study on this, and, kind of looking at that Flourish Veterinary Consulting for that study. Yep. But I think that we could look at how we know how much turnover costs. Mm-hmm. And so I think you could find a way to figure out how much psychological safety and a positive environment is actually contributing to the bottom line in terms of attracting people to the practice. I don't know, Natalie, you tell me, do you guys have a backlog of people who want to work at your practice, or are you as desperate as everyone out there to find people?
Well, I don't know if I can take credit because I haven't been at my current practice for very long, just been about a year. But I will say that there is a positive culture of, people who come, they really only leave if there's something like a major life event or, some reason that's not job related that they tend to leave. And I think it's well known that we foster a culture of, everybody's opinion counts. Everyone feels comfortable and safe. And so I do think that is a huge thing of, not just my leadership in specifically, but the leadership that they incorporate into the structure of the company as a whole. I think they don't pick anyone to be a leader within this company. So I do think there's something to be said of that. And, looking back at my leadership in other companies, I have historically taken over, clinics that have been struggling a little bit and, they've had some toxic leadership before me. And so there's been a lot of challenges of changing that mindset and showing them that you can have a practice manager that cares about you. You can have someone that's going to put on scrubs and get in, next to you when somebody calls out and not just say, oh, well, deal with it. I think that showing them rather than just being that name in the face, I think that has made a huge impact. And I've had technicians come up to me and say, I'm so glad that you're a technician because you understand. And that's not always the case with some leadership. So,
yeah,
for sure. Mm-hmm. And here's a question, because I know there are a lot of places that have good intentions and the execution may be lagging behind the intentions a little bit because life is super busy and stressful. And even if you have a study that says it's worth this much to really work on the culture of your practice and, really work on psychological safety, it's still hard to prioritize that when you have, a wait list for clients of 6 weeks and somebody's calling out every day or whatever. And you still have maybe some toxic team members that you're not really sure what to do with. And how would you think, or how have you seen that process kind of get jump started? Where the heck do we start?
I think you hear this a lot. It seems kind of trite, but it really does start at the top. So I think if you have a commitment from the leadership and the top can be your hospital manager. If you're in a corporate chain, the top is a little bit, it's kind of in the cloud. You don't really understand who is the top, where is the top.
Right. But you're not going to get the CEO to take a leadership course.
Good. That would be awesome. Amazing. But, you can start at your level at the hospital. I think we can all start at our own level to bring that to our work every day. The idea, and Natalie hit it exactly right, that personal caring. Mm-hmm. I care about you as a person. I want to know what's happening with you as a person. And I want you to bring your whole self to work. You hear a lot about, leave home at home. And, but I think we all have to bring our whole selves to work.
At that.
Yeah. And if we're struggling outside of work, that struggle is going to spill over into our work. And I think it's important that you don't have to share everything. I'm not talking about being TMI and laying it all out on the table, but the space to be able to say to a coworker, or if you're the hospital manager, to your leads or on down, hey, not just through the treatment area. Hey, everybody doing okay? Okay, great. See you later. Hey, a sit down, a check-in once a week, once every 2 weeks. How are things going? How are you feeling? Is there support you need from us, from the practice? Are there things that you see we could change? Whatever it might be. Those small steps, it doesn't have to be a big thing, a 10-minute check-in, where you can say to someone, I personally care about you. I am here listening to you. I am connected to you. And I really want to hear what you say. But then I think the bigger piece is the follow through, showing that you actually listened and doing what you can to then demonstrate that you have heard, that you've internalized this, whatever it is that they've talked about or brought to you, or they said something is amazing. How do you do more of that? Then demonstrating that, because I think without the demonstration, I think that's where it all falls apart, because then people are like, oh, well, they're just another like talking head. They don't really care. They're not really doing anything. And I think we all have little things that we can do, no matter our level. But I do think it starts at the top. And I think if the manager starts that process, and I know we're slammed with clients, we feel like we don't have time to do any of these things. And I think we have to make time to do these things, because these are the things that are going to make the biggest difference down the line. It's going to make much more of an impact if you can take a little bit of time every day to demonstrate to people on your team that you personally care about them, while you're dealing with all of the myriad of other things that come up for a manager that you have to deal with. But that one, pick a team member a day, and take 10 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it might be, to just like have that personal connection. I think that's where it starts. And then it builds from there, because once you start doing that and people feel more connected, they feel more connected to you, they feel more invested in the practice, they recognize that you are invested in them, they're going to give back. That is what team members do. We want that. When we think about generational differences, I think that's the biggest thing. Millennials, Gen Z, that's what they want. They want to know that they matter, that their work matters, that what they're doing has an impact and matters to someone beyond just what they're bringing in terms of a financial difference.
This AHA podcast is brought to you by Care Credit. Care Credit understands that all veterinary teams are busier than ever. To help patients get the care they need, the Care Credit Health and Pet Care Credit Card allows clients to access a budget-friendly financing experience anytime, from anywhere on their own smart device. They can learn, see if they pre-qualify, apply, and even pay if approved, all on that smart device. With just a tap, they have a friendly, contactless way to pay over time for the services and treatments their pet needs, whether it be a general, referring, or specialty hospital, as long as they accept the Care Credit credit card. That's so true. Technically, I'm Gen X, depending.
Me too.
Yeah, depending, but people forget about us anyway, so we might as well just lump ourselves in with the millennials. But but that idea of you matter, people take it and they distort it into everybody wants a participation prize for just doing their job. But the fact is that I have never seen a group of people as committed and dedicated for so little return as veterinary technicians. Like, you all have been beaten down for a long time. It is a hard physical job. It's an impossible emotional job. You get basically no recognition from pet owners about it, and very little recognition from the rest of the profession. And you don't even have the sole right to call yourselves veterinary technicians at this point. And so it is amazing to me how much technicians do for so little, and how absolutely committed as a group you are to stick with it as long as you can. And just knowing that so many technicians leave the profession. I mean, what is the average career, like 5 years or something before people leave? And they almost all say, I want to go back, but I can't. Or these things would have to be true if I went back. They're already saying them. It's already out there. It's not a mystery. And they're asking for like, please treat me like a human and pay me enough so that I can pay my bills. Like, that's it. That's literally it.
Literally it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a solvable problem. Like, I feel like that it's not one of those things. It's like, oh gosh, what should we do? Like, I feel like we know what we need to do. So why is it so hard for us to do it?
I think that's the $1 million question, right?
It is.
I think a lot of us leaders know what the barriers are, and we know why they exist. It's the movement that I think is hard. It's, there are so many of us that are trying to take these baby steps in, making a difference within our practice and making a difference within a certain specialty, or, whatever we can put our hands on and touch. We're trying to make what little difference we can. But I think until we start to have more of these conversations, more of these, get these podcasts out there, get all of this type of continuous motion with discussing the issues and bringing it to light, I think that's what's going to help us get there. It's just really getting every leader in the profession to be like, what can I do? What little bit can I do to make a change within my own practice that will contribute to the bigger picture?
I think there are big systemic things that we can do, but those take real commitment and leadership that I think many people don't feel they have the bandwidth for, or maybe they just feel like, I'm just a lonely technician. What can I do to fix these systemic issues? And I think, Natalie, again, just spot on. It's continuing to have the conversations and finding ways to get yourself into the places where these discussions are happening. So, I'm here on this podcast. Natalie's here on this podcast. We're talking about it. We have a platform to amplify the voices of other folks. But one big way, and I'm just going to put in a plug here for state veterinary technician associations, because I think they are just doing hugely heavy lifting right now in the profession to fix issues on a systemic basis and really pushing the conversation forward in their own states. And I think that is the place where the impact is starting to be felt. And I think that state veterinary medical associations are feeling that a little bit more. And what happens then is it starts to trickle up. Because if your state vet tech association is out there advocating, in the legislature, at veterinary medical board meetings, having these discussions, making sure that the veterinary medical board is paying attention to credentialed technician issues in the state and reminding them what those issues are and continuing to push that envelope at that level. What happens is the state VMA pays attention to that. They hear those discussions. They see what's happening. They go to a House of Delegates meeting for the state and they talk about those issues there. And then what happens is that gets up to the AVMA House of Delegates meeting. This is, people say they don't like politics. They don't want to play politics. I just want to come to work and do my job. But if we truly want to create the big change, we have to push it from the grassroots up into the areas of the profession where the decisions are really being made.
Liz, I'm so glad you said that. The state I'm in, our Veterinary Technician Association dissolved within the past couple of years. And it broke my heart because they were doing amazing things, putting on CEs, doing events, but they just didn't have the support. They didn't have the bandwidth. It was a couple people doing all of the work and just not having a pipeline of leaders to follow. And I wonder, is there anything that we can do to kind of encourage that within, the technicians that I would talk to and say, hey, why don't you consider being a part of that? They, just like you were saying, they'd say, well, I'm just a technician. What do I have to contribute? I don't know anything about leadership and things like that. So I'm wondering what we can do to help encourage that, encouraging not just being a member of your state association, but, taking those leadership roles and helping, build upon that so that we don't have situations like that. Because, I do think that we're feeling a loss in the state that I'm in because of that.
Yeah, that makes me so sad.
Yeah.
I think a big thing that practices can do is actually invest in their technicians and pay the dues for the state vet tech association, because sometimes the dues are not that expensive. They're sometimes $50 a year, $30 somewhere between $30 and $100 a year. Mm-hmm. So depending on how many technicians you have, it's not that huge of an investment. And I think that is, if you pay their dues, then the practice can say, hey, we've paid your dues to join the association. Have you gone to any of their CE? Have you volunteered to be on a committee? Are you how can we also support you in getting more involved in your state association? And maybe it's, we'll pay you half time if you go for the time that you're volunteering. for your state association will pay you a quarter time, or will pay you $50 or whatever it is, right? You figure out the financials and how they work. But that's how you can incentivize people getting involved, because you can say, hey, if you're volunteering for your state association, I'm a member of 2 VTS academies, and I do a lot of volunteer work for the VTS academies, and we incentivize our members to be involved by giving them recertification points. So like everything they get involved in, they get a little thank you, and hey, you can do this and we'll give you a little bit of points that helps you recertify in 5 years. And I think that kind of a thing is how a practice group, how practice leadership can encourage the folks in their organization to get involved. The other side of that, of course, is helping to make sure they have good work-life balance, which is what technicians all want, and Katie mentioned it, we want to be paid enough so that we can pay our bills with one job. Mm-hmm. And when you have technicians who are out there having to sell their plasma or do a bunch of work on the side or have 3 jobs just to get to the end of the month, then they can't even conceive of having any time to do anything outside of that. So there really is a fundamental systemic and like basic issue that they need before they can think about taking that next step and getting involved. So I think that is, it's number one, making sure they're taken care of, that they're able to work one job, that they are compensated and have benefits that they need to like survive. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now we have that part done. Now we're going to make sure that you're getting out on time, because we're going to be adequately staffed. We're going to manage our schedule appropriately so that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do so you can get out on time. And utilizing technicians to the full extent helps everybody get out of the practice on time. Don't make your technicians and your assistants be your cleaning staff, like hire janitorial services so that people aren't staying after the hospital is closed to clean bathrooms, to mop floors. Like, let's stop having that be a thing and, give other people that work. And then people are getting home on time. Then they have enough money to pay their bills. They don't have to work 3 jobs. Then they can start thinking about, what can I do? How can I get involved to help change things for more people? And then you can talk about, okay, we're paying your dues for your state association. How are you being involved in your association? What are you doing to move the needle in the direction we want the profession to go?
In listening to you, going through sort of that, it's like a list of, it's like a continuum of like what you can do to make this possible for your team members. And none of those things are like absolutely earth-shaking, changes. Like, you could be like, oh, janitorial staff, I could look for that now. And that would mean at least 1 or 2 staff members might get out earlier every day. Like, that's one thing. And I think it's just like so many things where we realize that it's the one step at a time approach, like just do the next thing. And maybe not, it is a long game, but you can't focus on the end of the tunnel all the time, because it is a long tunnel. Like, we've been in this tunnel for a long time. We live in this tunnel. This is where we live. So could we at least take a step towards the end of the tunnel this week? And I was also thinking, when you were saying like there are so many people that are just doing what they need to do to get by, that they can't possibly think of anything they'd rather do less, even if they could find the time, than like sit in a room with other technicians, like argue about what we should be doing next. Like, let's face it, there's a lot of strong personalities in those rooms, and there should be, because that's how things get done. If everybody's just like, okay, then we would all just stay the same. But that means that selects for only a certain type of person with a certain set of circumstances that's going to be making the rules and helping get things changed. And that has led to a lot of things in vet med that, are causing us to stagnate. So people in hospitals where they really haven't historically had a great culture and work-life balance, and they have not been able to empower their teams, need to think about this maybe the most, because those staff members need to have a voice. and figure out how to fix the system so that it's not like that forever. And one thing that I've noticed in talking to some technicians is that, like you said, they might say, oh, I'm just one technician, like what can I do? But they also, and I'm generalizing obviously, but associate vets are kind of like this too. People have not empowered them before. And it's not a group of people that I feel like have had people telling them forever, you can do whatever you want, you can make a difference, like no matter what your title is. What can we do about that? Like, how can we get technicians to feel like they can make a huge change and it's worth their time to try?
Yeah, I think it all just goes back to leadership, just having someone in your corner that's encouraging you and, showing that they see you, that they see your strengths, that they see what you're capable of. I think that's been something that was missing in my career, early on. It was the same thing Liz was talking about. You just show up, you do your job, you clean the bathroom and you go home. It's hard to feel like you have anything to contribute when there's no one that's supporting that. So I think just having, whether it is your direct line manager or another technician in the clinic, whoever it is that can kind of partner with you and encourage you and say, hey, you're really good at that. You should, teach a wet lab on making blood smears or, whatever the case is, encouraging that growth and then showing you that you have something to contribute, I think is a huge part of that.
We have to continue to remind people there is so much, we have a big self-confidence issue, generally speaking, as veterinary technicians, the veterinary assistants, veterinary team members, period. The amount of times that I hear or see someone put just in front of their title. We have to stop doing that. We are co-equal members of the veterinary healthcare team. We serve a different role than the veterinarians do. Mm-hmm. And I get that there is a hierarchy in terms of supervision levels and things like that. And I also think that when we work together, that hierarchy is pretty flat in an organization where technicians are utilized fully and respected as professionals. And I think that it's slowly shifting now to understanding that technicians, credentialed veterinary technicians, are professionals who have invested in their profession and in themselves, and that they feel a sense of duty and responsibility, and that's demonstrated by holding a license to practice. Mm-hmm. And so these veterinarians who say things like, well, it's all on my license if a mistake happens, like, you know what, it's not, because I have a license that I also have to protect. So I would like you, veterinarian, not to delegate things to an assistant, because guess what? That's my license. If something happens in the practice, that's on my license too. So how about we not do that? How about instead we respect each other as professionals, doing the things that we can do best. So, or that we're limited to by law, right? Veterinarians do 4 things. They do surgery, they make a diagnosis,
or not.
They deliver, or not. They deliver a prognosis, and they write prescriptions. And everything else, depending on the level of supervision, depending on your state law, should be either a credentialed veterinary technician or a veterinary assistant doing those things. And if we do that, if we truly utilize people, elevate them to their full potential, their fullest level of education, skill, knowledge, then, I mean, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, but I do think the respect then comes, because you can start proving yourself to what you know, what you can do. Then you're going to be trusted more. Then you're going to be able to do more, to contribute more to the bottom line of the practice, which means that the practice is going to understand your value more. Until we get to that point where we stop denigrating ourselves, where we stop putting just in front of our title and really stand up and say, I am a proud RVT and I am good at what I do and I know what I know. I mastered 240 or demonstrated proficiency in 240 hands-on skills and passed a national exam. I can do these things. And hey, veterinarian, allow me to do these things. And I am okay starting in a low risk situation and environment to demonstrate that I can do these things and build trust with you. And you have to give me the chance to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that it really is, it's going to take a whole profession-wide like team effort. And we need veterinarians who are supportive of us to continue to push that with their associates, because we're not in those rooms where right. discussions and decisions get made. You know, if you're in a practice and they have doctors' meetings, you know, I always just hope there's someone in that room advocating for the team. Mm-hmm. Whether it be the hospital manager, whoever's leading that meeting, the medical director, someone, you know, if the doctors are complaining, I'm not getting out on time because I can't get my records written, you know, okay, well, what's your technician doing? What's your assistant doing? What are you placing catheters? Are you doing blood draws? Like what's happening here that is impinging on you being able to get home on time, that's affecting your quality of life, that you're then coming to, you know, complain to me as the medical director about, rather than, you know, you just need to be more efficient, or you need to figure out how to manage your time better. Like those are the kinds of discussions, I think. And as those things filter through the profession, and it's happening, we have younger people coming in, more technicians, credentialed technicians who have worked really hard to get where they are, mm-hmm. are demanding that kind of treatment and respect, which is mm-hmm. so heartening to see. And I love to see it. And I think those of us who have the ability to have that voice, we're in a leadership position, or, you know, we're not dependent on, you know, a corporation to pay our bills or whatever it might be. You know, those of us who can speak up on behalf of others, I think we encourage others to speak up for themselves. And so I think continuing to model that behavior and then not closing the door behind you. Yeah. So we have come through a door. And instead of closing that door, we need to reach behind us and pull more people through the door with us. And I think if we can do that, that's how we're going to bring more of those people into these organizations and allow them to flourish in a way that they can really show what they can do.
Well, it's kind of a mic drop.
Yeah.
That was good. Yeah. I
know. How do you follow that?
I have a yes and to add to that, which is, then when you've empowered people to speak up for themselves and encouraged them to do that and given them the ability to go out and do things, you know, that they're skilled enough to do, don't punish them for doing that.
Right.
Right. And I speak from experience and also from watching this happen, which is like, oh, you know, then suddenly a technician might be viewed as entitled because they actually do want CE money, or they want to go to a training on something and learn how to do ultrasound or something like that. And it's like, you know, how dare she ask for that money, you know? And it's like, you told her that you valued her. And this is how she's responding. And that means you did a good job. And this is a good thing for everybody. And this is something, and I know it doesn't all come back to gendered issues, but I do feel like because there are so many people in this profession who identify as female, and we're taught not to ask for things and to apologize mm-hmm. if we ask for more than we're offered. And that's a whole other conversation. But I do think that comes up a lot in this, because like negotiating contracts, you know, I was never taught how to do that. Were you? And I grew up with a lawyer dad. Like, so I
think AHA should offer some assertiveness training and negotiation training. I mean, honestly, I think it would be so valuable. We should have a whole track of that at AHACon, a whole track.
I am here for that.
On negotiating skills, you know, asking for what you need and how to get it, and, you know, and assertiveness, because there is a difference. There's a fine line, but there's a difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness, and how do you walk that line, and how to not be a doormat. And, you know, it is, we know we have the studies to show we have certain personality types in this profession. And I think those are the personality types who need that kind of training.
Yeah, definitely. The not waiting to bring something up until it's an angry blow up, which was very difficult for some of us to learn, and now we can't shut up. So that is the downside, is like you might have people who actually express their opinions on the regular, even when you didn't ask. Natalie, I'm curious about your experience, because I know Liz and I know each other on social media. And so I see some of the stuff she posts. I'm sure she sees what I post. And I'm always like, I can identify with this, type 8s unite.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if that's something you've experienced, where you've had to grow into being more assertive and asking for what you want, or if you've been perceived as too aggressive, if you have done that.
Yeah, and I follow Liz on social media as well, so I definitely identify with a lot of things she says as well. But I do think it's a good point to bring up that the profession is majority female, right? And so a lot of the coaching that I do with my technicians and with people that are under me is speaking up for themselves, because I think that's something that we don't encourage enough. And so you're in a weird place when you're a manager, so you have to look at the financial health of the business, but you also want these people to want more for themselves, right? So like, it doesn't make sense for me as a manager to tell you should ask for more. that doesn't benefit me as a business, business manager. But I also see these technicians, and they don't know any better, because like you're saying, they weren't taught. And so that's become something that I'm really passionate about, because I've been there. I have been hired for positions that I should have been paid way more for. I've been hired in positions where my counterparts had the exact same experience, the same responsibilities, and were paid more than me. They were white males. So, I do feel like I have that additional layer also of being a woman of color, is that I have to be very mindful of, how I come to the table and how I present myself. Because there is that kind of the balance, like you guys are talking about, of not being that angry person, right? But also, I do want to speak up for what I feel like I deserve and what my value is within the practice. So yeah, it's been something that I've grown into over many, many years, just after realizing and having people that poured into me, other, women of color within the profession, veterinarians, vet techs, others that saw me and saw themselves in me and were able to help me kind of get to that point where I can still say what I need and I can be firm without being seen as progressive, because that is definitely a thing. So, but I don't think it's just a racial or ethnic thing. I think it comes down to just us as women. We all are taught, just like you said, that say thank you, say please and thank you, and be be soft. And these conversations are coming back up in in the dating world and in conversations on social media. Be feminine, be that soft feminine person that we're supposed to be. But that doesn't have to mean that we don't also value ourselves. I think that's a huge thing that we need to remind ourselves.
And Natalie, you said it, you had people pour into you, and I love that analogy or metaphor, and I think it's so perfect. It's what we need. It's what I strive to do with people I work with, is to remind them how amazing they are. Mm-hmm. But if instead you have people draining you, pulling the plug out from the bottom instead of pouring more in, it's really difficult. And I think looking for those people, and if you're a leader, being that person to pour into people, reminding them how amazing they are, how far they've come, how they're contributing. Even when you have to have those difficult coaching conversations, because that's still going to be a thing. You can do that and still say, look, you are incredible and amazing, and I see how much potential you have, and that's why I'm having this conversation with you. Because if I didn't see how amazing you were, and if I didn't care about you, I would not have this conversation with you. And that is still, even in that coaching environment, even in all the things you have to do as a manager and a leader, and making sure that things are functioning well, you can still build people up and fill them up and remind them of those things. I'm glad you had people in your life who did that for you. and in your career. And I was lucky enough to have people in my career who did that for me too. And I think it makes a huge difference in how we can then move forward and bring people up, not necessarily behind us, but alongside us to continue to advance where we are.
I love that whole exchange. There's something I was thinking about that in light of my own experience as a very quiet kid who grew into a very loud adult somehow. And I think one of the biggest things for me that I saw different with good cultures versus not so good cultures was the ability to distinguish between what you do and who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. And Natalie, it goes back to what you were saying when you were talking about being authentic with your team, showing them who you are. And that automatically earns you so much trust when you're willing to show them, like, if you're having a bad day or you're like, I'm sorry, like, I am not really present right now because I've got something going on and I'm distracted. Like, this makes you a good leader, not a bad leader, mm-hmm. because we all bring all that stuff with us, and not admitting it just makes it feel like there's a wall between us. And that trust is what allows them then, if you give them feedback that isn't maybe, that is constructive, it's more about, okay, I see you and you see me. Here's a thing that you do that maybe we could talk about how we could do it a little bit differently. Not, you are a person who does this and that's not acceptable. Mm-hmm. Like, and I've been treated that way so many times by leaders who just, put me in a category and said, she is this type of person. And it kept me really afraid for a long time, because I was afraid to be, to be put in a category I didn't feel like I belonged in. Mm-hmm. And the three of us here, it sounds like, have had very similar experiences in some ways, which is that we've been sort of taught to, or it's been ingrained in us to keep things to ourselves because we didn't want to make waves. And we figured out that wasn't good. Like, we were not about that life. And Natalie, you do have an extra component of being a woman of color. Like, I know the statistics, but I can't imagine being in a situation where automatically I sit down at the table and there's something else that's like another box that they put me in. I think as an industry, we do still have a lot of work to do in this area, but we have an advantage, which is there are a lot of women and, people who identify as women in this field. So if we decide as a group to do things differently, it will make a difference. It has to. And I love hearing from two strong women who have navigated this themselves and said, okay, I know that this is going to be a thing and I'm going to have to figure out how to navigate it. It might not be fair, but we do it.
I think that authenticity, and like you said, it engenders trust, which mm-hmm. engenders commitment to the person that you're working for. It makes you, if they trust you with that piece of them, with being their true authentic self, then you mm-hmm. feel, I maybe I should just speak for myself. I feel more committed to that person. Yeah. And we know that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And if I feel committed to my manager, I'm not going to leave. Because I have a fuller understanding of what's going on, where they're coming from, how we can work together. I know they trust me, they're invested in me, and I'm going to invest right back.
Yeah. We're in this together, not I'm telling you what to do and then you're telling them what to do, which is so much of how vet life is a lot of the time. So, okay, we started out to talk about team retention, specifically technician retention, because I think that's where the biggest pain is right now. And it evolved very quickly into a conversation about good leadership, positive leadership, mm-hmm. good culture. And we've sort of wandered off a little bit a couple of times, but it's always come back to that. And that seems very telling. And I have to shout out as well to Josh Vaisman, because his book, Lead to Thrive, is, it's a fantastic resource. And also, being lucky enough to have had Josh in my life as a friend, he is the embodiment of what he describes in that book. So if you have not had a chance to hear Josh speak, definitely get that done, and also pick up that book, available in the AHA store. But his whole theory is positive leadership will change this profession, and he gives actionable steps for how to do it. And I feel so strongly in my bones that that's true. And it seems like the two of you do as well. It's
the absolute key to retention.
Yeah.
That's why we keep coming back to it.
Yep. Yeah. You two do something that at least here you have. I haven't talked to you in person all that much, hardly at all. Natalie, I just met today. Very glad that we did. But you two have done something on this podcast that Josh does that I think makes him such a believable and trustworthy leader and teacher, which is he is fully present in the conversation. Being fully present in a conversation when you're talking to one of your direct reports, and really showing that you're listening. And if you can't do that, tell them why. It's okay. If you have like 27 emails coming in and you're like freaking out about something and something's on fire, it's okay. But if not, can you be present for them and really show that what they're saying matters? Because you both have given me that feeling today, just in this one conversation. And it's really a gift to have a conversation with somebody who is fully there. So if there's one thing you could go forth and do for your team as a leader today, it's that takes no effort to sit down and say, okay, here I am.
Absolutely. I've built this kind of system with my direct reports where they know if they were to call me, because we have, different modes of communication, right? If they need something taken care of by the end of the week, they'll email me. If they need something by the end of the day, they'll text me. But if they call me, they know that I'm dropping everything that I'm doing because I know it's important that they need to speak to me on the phone. And I think that's a huge thing, is having that relationship so that we both know on both ends. If I call them, it's the same thing. They're going to make a way to, even if they can't pick it up at that point, they're going to make a way to call me back right away, because if we're putting forth that effort to reach out to you in that way, we know it's important. And I think that's a huge thing. I learned that from one of my leaders, building that kind of expectation so that we respect each other's time, and we also know, that we value each other in that way.
I love that so much.
Liz, do you have anything similar that you've either had a manager tell you or that you've instituted when you've been overseeing other people?
I think that is such an amazing way of, it's a really amazing way of demonstrating your respect, like you said, for their time, and also communicating your boundaries. Hey, don't call me if it's not something that you need me to drop everything for right now. And I think that is an issue that I have dealt with managers in the past. And I think it is kind of an ongoing issue, is this, I don't know, it's a combination of feeling like you have to do everything, that no one else can do anything, which of course it feels not great as a team member, because you're capable of helping and you want to be helpful. And so that's one piece of it. And also just like this, I think some people who don't have good leadership training think that they have to be available all the time. That open door means like 100% availability all the time, like completely boundaryless, boundless, whatever word I'm looking for. And I think that doesn't work.
No,
because
at least not for long.
Right. And if you have that kind of situation, then your people don't understand either. The people you're leading don't understand. And I think having that set up for the team so that they understand, if my phone rings and it's Natalie's name on there, I better answer this because it's something really important, because she wouldn't call me if it weren't something really important. And that is a two-way street. I think that is so amazing, especially today with all of the ways we have to communicate with each other in the work environment. I just think that's just an incredible way of communicating that boundary, and also the respect, like you said, for someone's time. And I love that. And I wish more leaders had that kind of training, or at least the ability to set something like that up. Because so many times your phone rings and you're like, I don't even know, like I'm one of these people who gets that full adrenal squeeze when I see the manager's name on my, phone. I'm like, I'm not sure what's coming. And that's the other piece of it is there's an expectation now, okay, if this, like the phone is ringing, it's not because she's going to yell at me for something I forgot to do during my shift or that's not what it's going to be. It's something that needs my attention for a reason right now that's really important, but it's not going to be something that's like leading me down a path of destruction, I guess.
That's true. That's so true, though. Like you can yell at somebody, but it doesn't have to, it's not an emergency. So
it rarely is. I mean, feedback should be immediate, but
but maybe the yelling could like cool off a little bit before, so it's not actually yelling, but That's
I think that's the kind of thing. It all comes down to respect, communication, demonstrating that personal caring, and that you do that by respecting someone's boundaries. And I think that's so key. And that's what people want in the workplace. Yeah, that and to be able to work one job.
Yes, respect, a living wage.
Yes.
Let's start there.
That is how we retain people.
We could have just had a 3-second podcast. What do we need? Respect, living wage. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's it. Done.
But so much harder in practice always than it is. And if you can't pay people as much as you would like to pay them, living wage still important. But even if you'd want to pay them more than you're able to, the respect will go a long way there. None of us got into this field to be rich. And being able to pay bills is important. Also, going to work and coming home every day with the feeling that you're appreciated for the person you are, very important.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So Natalie, I know you have to run here. And so I think this is a place. We lost Heather. She was like, bye-bye. You guys could have done this in 3 seconds. I'm out. We lost Heather to technical difficulties. So I'm very sad about that. But we'll get her back on. She's committed now. But Natalie, would you give our listeners a place where they can find out more about you or learn what you're working on or where you work?
Sure. I don't really have a lot out there on social media.
Power to you.
That's not curly hair related. So if you want to know about curly hair,
you have great hair.
But I do have a vet tech page on Instagram, so you can follow that. It's natalie.b.rvt. So that is my professional Instagram page. I'm going to try to do better about updating that because I do tend to do more of the curly hair content than vet tech stuff. But
also important.
Yes.
I love the curly hair content.
Great.
I wish I had curly hair to need curly hair content.
You can always watch. It's fun.
You can follow me. I'm at Liz Hughston, Hughston on Instagram. And it's, a mix of vet tech stuff and then what Instagram is, like pictures of my pets and food I eat and stuff like that. So
authenticity. What it's about.
There's a lot of authenticity, that is for sure. A lot of Enneagram content too. But
I always appreciate that. Makes me feel less alone.
And then because I'm, an old white lady, you can find me on Facebook, also at Liz Hughston.
Samesies. Well, thank you both. This was so much fun. And I'm sorry we lost Heather, but you are both shining lights. And I feel optimistic too about where the profession and veterinary technicians especially are headed with people like you at the helm. So thank you so much for spending this time.